Okay, so I will call this meeting to order. It's 7:01 p.m. I want to first thank everybody for coming. Thank you, board, for all this last minute. It was a last minute attempt to get this together so that we are filled in. And thank you to the spouses who are putting up with this. I also want to address the fact that there's a lot of people who are really frustrated with COVID and are ready for mitigations to start going down. I think it's important to recognize that the COVID committee is getting input from the hospitals and what's going on there. And it's a very dire situation at the hospital. And so they're aware of things that maybe the rest of us are not. So, so thank you to the COVID committee as well for that expertise, and continue to please be patient. All right, with that, Corrine.
All right, well, thank you. First of all, thank you all of you for being able to meet tonight. It's I just wanted to have a forum after, sitting into last Monday's COVID committee, and what Elise and Katie and their entire staff are doing to try to keep a lid on everything that's going on besides running the day-to-day operations of a school. So I definitely want to thank them and certainly bring recognition to them for what they're doing, because it's not easy and it's not getting easier, unfortunately. But wanted to get some sort of information out to you as a group, just so you kind of know what kind of planning is going on behind the scenes, so that the teams in the school is going to be ready for whatever comes across in terms of flipping to a remote schedule or a school closure. And I wanted you to know that these are conversations that have been going on, and that we've got some sort of a draft plan. It looks pretty good from what I just opened before, and Elise is here to add to it, and Katie as well. Thanks to them, and Mickey also is a big part of this with the teachers. And what we are grappling with is watching the numbers, and the COVID committee and Katie at the head is monitoring all of this on a very regular basis, as I would hope that you know that, and following the Department of Health and Human Service guidances. Now, it is not recommended that schools close even if you have a high number of cases, but again, that nothing is in stone. It could flip on a switch, and Katie's very connected with how that decision would have to be made. The piece that really comes to light is we have been using substitutes. We've been using assistants to cover classrooms, because the biggest concern is if we have too many staff members out, we can't educate kids, whether they're there or not. So that's the plan that's been worked out, a temporary plan, and we hope we never have to use it, but we need to be ready for it. We have a plan that if there's a certain amount of teachers out and we don't have specialists that cover, and we don't have substitutes to cover, then it may mean that either the middle school has to go remote or has to not be in school, or if the case of the staffing is such that in the lower school, we can't meet the needs of the kids with substitutes, specialists, then maybe they would have to be out of school. And then there would be circumstances that if we have at least 6 teachers overall that we cannot get coverage for through the substitutes that we have, or the specialists that we're moving around, or the assistants, then that would involve a whole school closure. So the team has created different scenarios of what would precipitate that. One of the things that I followed up on is double checking on the state requirement for the number of hours in school. So the state requires elementary schools to have 945 hours of instructional time. And they require 990 hours of instructional time for middle and high schools. And so checking on what was submitted with the state with a Lyme calendar, we are very comfortable and in a very good place on having already, for the elementary school, we have 105 hours over that minimum requirement. And for the middle school, we have 60 hours over the minimum requirement. So I feel comfortable that if we have to close for a very short period of time, that we would not have to make up that time because we are well cushioned with extra number of hours. There is conflicting information between not going remote versus just closing schools. And I think we need to look at it case by case with the district and looking at what the scenario is and what's going to work best for Lyme, the kids, and the staff. An example would be if the school had to close for a 10-day period, 2 days would have to be time allotted for teachers to prepare for that and for distribution of materials. So potentially 2 kids would go without, 2 days without instruction, but definitely work time for the staff. We have also preliminarily discussed having a memorandum of understanding with the LEA, because if we have to pull teachers out of their planning period, then we will need to compensate them for that extra time. So that has not been finalized yet, but it is being worked on because it's a piece that has to go into this puzzle. I would just, I thank Elise and Katie, again, and they are on if they would like to clarify or add or correct me. But I thought it was important that you needed to know all of the planning and the time that's going into trying to create the best scenario under the circumstances, regardless what happens. And I know either plan, whether it's remote learning or it's school closure, raises havoc for parents. It's the nature of the beast, and it's very difficult to make these kinds of decisions, let alone have the conversations. But we are, it's really critical that we prepare, and it's just good planning anyways. And hopefully if more people get vaccinated, we continue to use mitigation strategies under Katie's guidance, with the masking and the social distancing, and maybe decreasing some activities where kids are grouped together, that we can beat this thing once and for all. That's the goal. So I just would, I don't want to put Katie on the spot. I don't want to put Elise on the spot. But they are your true heroes in the trenches pulling this together. So if they'd like to add, and then certainly if there are any board members that, have any information that we don't have, or, have comments or anything that you want to address in this type that maybe raises a question for the team, that's why I thought it was important that we had this meeting tonight. So I will stop there and see if somebody has a breather.
I'm happy to give a current update on the COVID situation at our school, if you'd like, if that would be helpful. Yep.
And you're talking about the testing that we had. We tested 112 students and staff on yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, so the number will be fluctuating over the next few weeks in terms of positive cases at our school. Currently, we have 4 positive and 2 that would be presumed positive cases. And we did do our testing yesterday with the SASS program. When we started doing it, we did 87 people, and yesterday we did 112. So more people are joining. As of just a few minutes ago, only 75 tests results have been added up to the portal. All of those 75 were negative, but there's still the chunk left that hasn't been resulted yet for some reason. So that's just a testing reporting thing that might be a delay, but I don't think they don't typically like do all the negative first and the positive. So it's probably just a delay in testing. So, but overall, the good news is 75 out of 112 so far are negative. I continue to report positive cases to the Department of Health and Human Services. And if there was some discussion of whether we'd be sending a school-wide email for every positive case in the school, or just sending an email to the potentially exposed cohort instead, which is what the current plan is to do and what I've done. And I don't know if that's a discussion for the board, if you're hearing any feedback from parents about feeling a certain way about that. And then, if we had, there's no matrix for school closure or pivoting to any different type of method of instruction this year. So even if we did have clusters, which is 3 cases in a cohort, multiple clusters throughout the school, as you spoke to, there isn't any guidance or mandates or matrix from the state to move into a different method of instruction. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability.
Katie, what is the reasoning behind not allowing all the parents to be aware of sort of cases that are going on in the school versus just, highly impacted? I'm just curious. It's not, I don't have a strong judgment one way or another. I'm just trying to understand.
I think, I don't feel strongly either way as well. But, if we are seeing cases increase, I don't know how helpful it is for people to, I know in Hanover, they send out emails every single day for cases. And I don't know if that's something that is helpful or not to people. I think that if you don't get an email saying that you've had an exposure, because we keep extremely tight cohorts at the Lyme School, then there isn't a reason there really isn't a reason except for knowledge of knowing if there's how many cases are currently at the school, if you're keeping track. The other option would be to email the Lyme School community every week and just once a week kind of give the rundown of how many positive cases there are. But it's time consuming as well. Personally,
Yeah.
would be sending those emails out. But I guess if there was a strong desire for that from the school, from families, then I'll do it. I don't mind. That was just sort of the direction that we thought we would go in at the start of this year. But
well, thank you for that.
I'm happy to do that. I just didn't know how helpful or how alarming that would be to be getting emails every day. If it was somebody in the middle school that was nothing to do with a first grade class, then what would that really be useful information or not?
So I have a question. In terms of the staffing limitations, how much is the 5-day, how much is the 10-day isolation period that we currently have in place as guidance impacting our ability to staff the school? And I guess moreover, would that change if we move to the 5-day isolation strategy? And, and I'll also say that I'll add that because our entire school population has the ability to be vaccinated. And if, and vaccination, in my estimation, seems to be very effective to prevent serious illness if you're infected with COVID or SARS-CoV-2.
I guess I can answer the question. I mean, it's a little difficult to answer. I mean, obviously, if you're out for 10 days and you're out for 5 days, I mean, it does affect the school differently. I mean, we are going with the 10-day isolation right now, and we're able to cover it, but just keeping in check how many teachers we have ending up having to be isolated. The good news is we do have the on-call sub starting on Monday. So,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that obviously a 10-day period of time of being out is going to impact the school staffing more than a 5. That's something that we're going to be discussing on Monday in the COVID committee. It came out the school partners and school nurses had about how do you take a COVID positive person and after 5 days have them come back and eat snack in a bunch of room with everybody having their mask off or their lunch off, or how do you? So it was, that when the mitigation strategy is that they're supposed to be masked around everybody the whole rest of the 5 days. So it's a discussion about how to practically roll that out into the school setting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I don't disagree that there's some incongruency in the, guidance, like how do you like the logic of it? Like, how do I stay completely masked and eat lunch? I get that. I think that, I mean, for me anyway, I've gotten to the point where I think we need to accept that we need to live with this and people are going to be infected with this virus repeatedly, probably over the next, I don't know, perhaps for the rest of my lifetime. And that sucks. But we need to operate our school. And like I said, everybody at the school has the opportunity to protect themselves with a vaccination. And given that, I don't really see this as like dramatically different than every flu season we've lived through. Whether it's obviously COVID is more top of mind, but we need to move on. And I think that we should follow the CDC, and I think that the state is I think they've already adopted the 5-day guideline at minimum. That's gonna help. And if we have people at the school that don't want to vaccinate their kids and don't want to vaccinate themselves, that's, that's their choice, much like they have that choice with the flu vaccine. I'll also couch this by saying, I do think for the next month, probably at least, we need to limit transmission because DHMC is obviously slammed. So we need to do our part there. But I think we need to be realistic in the long run. And
but there's a whole population of 12 to 15-year-olds who are 6 months past their second dose that haven't
right,
had.
but on Monday they're going to get boosted, right? So that's just like, what is it? They get boosted. They've got 2 weeks.
But this is the reasons why we didn't on Wednesday immediately adopt
Right.
the 5-day.
Right. No, I do. I get it. I do. But we need to, I guess I'm just saying we need to move towards back some normalcy. And if people choose not to get vaccinated, that's their choice. And I'm sorry for that.
I'll just speak up and say thank you to the COVID committee as well, and for continuing to sort of, not remaining static and to rethink everything with this dynamic situation. And as you know, I live this in the hospital too, and I'm happy to see that cases are kind of going down in the hospital now. I think we're expecting to see another surge as well. We are also with the guidance of returning to work after 5 days of testing positive. And for me in practice with my employees, I've seen that there's, we can use this guidance, but also have to use our common sense as well, and I think it does depend, and I hope the committee considers whether the employee is symptomatic or not, because I have employees who have tested positive who are not symptomatic, and them coming back to work after 5 days is not a big deal. I have employees who are still symptomatic after well over 5 days, and them coming back to work optically doesn't seem like the best idea. So I think the employees having active symptoms is one thing, and also just being practical. If people are coming back to work, if you decide that reducing that isolation period is something that you would consider, that, just to take these on an individual basis and doing what's best for everyone. And I mean, and granted, one wouldn't take their mask off in a big room if they're still coughing and symptomatic and eating a snack. I mean, it's just impractical. So I just appreciate you just continuing to evaluate the situation and doing what's best for the kids and the employees there, and ultimately the community.
I have a question for Corinne. You indicated if staffing levels, right? So perhaps the rules say you have to stay home for a while after you test positive, which might affect the staff. When staffing levels drop to a point where you can no longer do in-school instruction, you indicated you might need 2 days before continuing remote instruction, right? I want to understand two aspects of that. One is, you do intend to move to remote instruction in that case. And two, is there anything we can do today to make sure we don't need 2 days so we don't have a discontinuity? Because anytime, right, that happens, well, we lose. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm taking the guidance from the staff, that there is a feeling that if they shifted remote, things are not all organized just yet. And yes, they're going to start to think about it. But they've asked specifically for 2 days because they're feeling that any prep work, whether it's hard copy or electronic, and distribution of materials, would take that amount of time. Whether they can shorten that if we have to remote, maybe we don't have to go to remote, say, till the end of February, after February break or March. You would think by now maybe there's things in place that would shorten that, but I can't attest to that. If Elise has a sense for that, I don't know. It is problematic to have 2 days of non-instruction. But again, the situation is such that, I don't know if it can be shortened, Vince. So I don't have a good answer for you at this point, because we're just
I can
on
speak
the
to
cusp of
that.
planning for this scenario.
Go ahead, Elise. Yeah.
I can speak to that. I've talked about it with the teachers. There's the issue of, we do not send the devices home with our students. And so there would be a day that teachers or parents would need to pick up devices, which is a logistical, time-consuming event, as we went through a few times. And also, teachers would be involved in getting those devices together, getting them down to be picked up. The parents would pick them up at a certain time, and then they would need the time to make sure that whatever hard copy materials were, made for pickup, and also then switching to remote. Some of the projects and activities that they have ongoing, it would take some thought and some planning to think, okay, now how can I continue this in an electronic way? It's not a quick shift. So I just want to reiterate, it's not that we're not organized, but it's just that the time it takes to make that shift thoughtfully, not just to filler activities, but to make that thoughtful, I say it would take 2 days.
Right. And so what my point was is, what can we do today? And I'm not saying there is anything. I was just suggesting, like, if we know that this may be a possibility, what can we do today to shorten that period? And, just in general, my commentary on that would be is that, right, like, I don't prefer remote instruction. I think that's known. I do agree with what was said earlier, that this is going to be something that is going to remain in society. We're not going to get away from it. And I think one of the greatest values that Lyme School brings today is the fact that the children are together in the school, right? That's, they learn a lot of social things from that. So I'm as much on that as we can, although I do understand the difficulties that staffing outages may cause. So that would be my encouragement. Like, let's see what we can do to shorten that period so that we can get to remote instruction as soon as possible, if that were to be required.
Anyone else have any questions? Sarah or Phil, you haven't said anything? No?
No, it's good to know that the COVID committee will be meeting on Monday. I think this is why that committee was established in the first place. So be looking forward to hearing their guidance.
We have such a wonderful COVID committee.
Wait, hold on. Can you guys hear her?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean,
sorry.
I just feel like we're in very good hands with recommendations, and I don't want, you know, COVID to take down everybody in the school, and we just keep going and see what we can do here. Reality.
All right.
Yola Sue Merrill.
Yola Sue Merrill has a
Sorry.
question.
You go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to double check the discussion of 5-day versus 10-day. It sounds like we're only talking about adults coming back after 5 days, not kids who have been positive coming back after 5 days. Is that true?
No, the guidance, the new recommendations that were adopted by New Hampshire from the CDC are for anyone who's test positive for COVID could shorten their isolation period from 10 to 5 if they accept the package of mitigations that are include masking around others at all times, amongst a few other things, but that's pretty much that would be the most difficult one to have take place during the school day.
Okay, because I just, in that case, and I would definitely want to say that I do feel that it's our responsibility to also protect those in our community who are under 5 years of age, because there are plenty of siblings at home, as well as children of staff members who are under 5 years of age. So expecting, you know, an adult to come back and after 5 days and follow those mitigations is very, very different than expecting a child to. And the only way that I can right off the bat think of a way to have a child eat where they weren't around other kids is going to be very socially isolating. And I know I definitely as a parent would not send my kid back in that situation. So I just wanted to put that in there. And I also wanted to just, you know, remind everybody that we were one of the only schools who stayed open all year last year. That absolutely is our goal. That is every teacher's goal there. None of us enjoy doing remote. So just so you know, we're doing everything that we possibly can to avoid going remote.
Thank you, Sue.
And so Katie, do you have a plan then if a kid comes back at 5 days to manage? I mean, sort of what Sue was saying, or, you know.
No, because currently we're not doing that.
You're not doing that. This is the Monday conversation. Got it. Sorry.
Yeah, well, we would have to devise a plan to safely take care of a child, and during the school day that would protect the other kids and protect the staff that would be around them. So
Got it. Great.
Whatever. Am I unmuted now?
Oh, you're unmuted.
I mean, I think that the probability of a child under the age of 5 becoming seriously ill with COVID is very small, almost infinitesimally small. Certainly much lower risk than from a myriad of other viruses or bacteria that could infect them, and that their siblings could track home with them from the school. You know, point being that there's only so much that we can do. And at the minimum, I'll say again, everybody that resides or visits our school, lives within our school every day, has the opportunity to get vaccinated. And I think that the vaccines for, not to prevent infection, but to prevent serious illness if you're infected with SARS-CoV-2 are highly effective at preventing serious illness. So I think we need to keep the school open. I mean, again, if there are staffing limitations, then we need to consider those staffing limitations and try to resolve those staffing limitations. But there's no reason why the school shouldn't be open at this point.
Can we clarify that when we talk about school closing, it would be if we can't find enough substitutes only?
Right.
That's
exactly. If we have staffing limitations, but again, I mean, I know I read Katie's email the other day, and the COVID committee is currently today recommending that 10-day isolation period. And I would move to a 5-day isolation period if I had the choice. That's not my choice. That's the COVID committee's choice. And I will listen to their recommendation, but I think we should move to a 5-day. Because there's not going to be any difference between today really and September of, the next academic calendar year. This is still going to be here.
So the one thing that I would add in terms of suggestions is I wonder if, because of the logistics of having kids mask all the time and isolate in order to eat, whereas an adult is a little bit more realistic, that you could figure that out logistically. If we could consider having staff do the 5-day and providing the well-fitting masks if we need to, as well as and making sure that they're symptom-free, but having that become something.
We don't need to have kids isolating while they eat, right? Like, it's not.
I didn't hear what you just said, Jen. What did you say?
Like a little harsh, but it's not my fault if parents choose not to vaccinate their children. We go through this every year, right? Kids eat in a Confluent cafeteria during flu season, and the flu is much more, like, probability wise, dangerous to these kids, yet they're not masked. And some parents choose to vaccinate and others don't. And some years the vaccine works more efficiently than other years, right? But this whole COVID thing is more, it's more that it's just this, I don't want to label it a paranoia because it's not exactly what it is, but people associate like a certain panic with this. And, whether kids are masked or not while they're eating, we cannot continue to live like this, and we need to accept it. And the reality is that you and I will live the rest of our lives, and 50 to 100,000 people are probably going to die every year of COVID. Right. And I could be one of them, in spite of the fact that I've been vaccinated, boosted, and that I'll get vaccinated every year. We can't control this. I don't know. That's at least where I've gotten to. And if kids want to eat together, they should eat together.
Jen, I really appreciate your points. I completely agree with you. I wonder though if everyone is quite ready for that. I'm there, but I can understand why others may not be. But I think that it's reasonable to ask the COVID committee to sort of distinguish between symptomatic versus asymptomatic etiology or symptomology, and whether, if a kid could be found positive with this SASS program, right? And they could be completely asymptomatic and may not even know they're positive if they weren't participating in the program And so them being out for 5 days seems pretty reasonable, right? If they're not off right next to somebody 6 feet, coughing or whatever. I mean, I agree. It's on its way to being endemic. And I think that's probably a healthy way that you're looking at it now. I just don't know that everyone is quite ready for that. But perhaps if we could move toward distinguishing between being symptomatic and not being symptomatic.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. Maybe people aren't ready for it, but how are they going to become ready?
Time.
Well, time or shift, right? Like society shifts.
Sure.
And schools shift and hospitals shift and everybody shifts and everybody goes along with it, much like, yeah. I don't know, I don't know. We're leaders in our community, I guess. I don't discount the fact that it's a horrible thing. And all but we have to get through it and our kids need to be in school. Like that for me is the bottom line. It's better for them to be in school.
Anyone else? Corinne, is there anything else that we need to cover or I did send the
No, that's basically it. Just wanted to create an awareness and inform people as to what we were thinking in terms of, if we were short-staffed. I mean, that's the primary issue.
I did send around the MOA to everybody to take a look at. I don't know that everybody has probably had a chance to because it was late this afternoon that I did. So I don't know if you want an answer to that by Tuesday. Do we want to add that onto our agenda for Tuesday? I don't know. Hayes, did you have something else?
I didn't get that. Is it just in a document pool or did you push it forward?
I will send it again. I don't know how I did it.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was in a pool of documents on.
No, I think it was an email.
I don't think I got that.
Okay.
I have a question just about, so Elise, you mentioned that we're in pretty good shape with subs at the moment. I think I remember a more recent board conversation that we were kind of on the edge and it was harder to get people to come in. And if, I think it might be a time again for someone to post something on the listserv or, just to put another plug out there for the community to know, what the qualifications and compensation are, because I feel like we have so many community members that would be able to be there for a classroom and would be willing and able and would step forward if they knew that the implications of not having someone would be that a whole classroom would need to stay home.
Yeah, I mean, that's not usually my purview to put out the ads, and I'm not on the listserv, but I can make sure that that's done.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. I wasn't suggesting you doing it. I think I was just looking to you as the one who knows where we are in terms of our sub numbers and interest level in that. And sure. I mean, I think whoever's
Right now-
capable of doing it would be great.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a long-term sub starting on Monday, and we have a couple people, Nancy Wilson's come in. I mean, she's giving us a lot of her time now. So, and a few others that we can count on more regularly. So we're in pretty good shape. So.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you for the update.
Are we allowed to bring up other business?
Well, I think we were really calling this meeting just for this purpose.
Okay,
Because I think we don't want to digress because it was such an kind of, well, it's a special board meeting, right? So if there's nothing else, shall we call it, do I have a motion to adjourn? Is there anything else? Anyone else? I don't hear you, Jen. I'm assuming that's a motion. There you go.
Motion to adjourn.
So 7:42, do I have a second?
Come on.
I'm
I'll
guessing it's Vince. Excellent. All right, 7:42. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night. Have a good weekend.